In this video, we are going to talk about standard Hebrew word order and the times when that normal word order is disrupted. Now, normal word order, going from right to left, is that you can have a circumstance, something that introduces the passage or the verse to sort of set it in a particular time and place. This is not strictly necessary. It is optional, but it does sometimes happen. Then you will normally have the verb. This is very different than in English, where normal word order starts with the subject. In Biblical Hebrew, the standard word order is verb, subject, and then some kind of object. Then, after the verb, the subject, usually the indirect object next, and then a direct object if there is one. There are not always both within the same sentence. So in this example, az, then, sets the circumstance. Shama, the verb, hamelech, the subject, and then the indirect object. Then the king listened to them. So in your translation, you have to move the words around to be in correct English order. Another example here, we have the vav consecutive itself begins with sort of its own built-in circumstance. It's a narrative past tense. Then the verb, subject, and here we actually have three indirect objects. The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting. And finally here, we're starting with a verb, subject, indirect object, direct object. The Lord has given to you the land. Okay, so this is normal word order. There are times when that normal word order is interrupted or disrupted. For example, there are times when the subject will appear first because it is a new subject, and it wants to make clear that the events following have to do with this new subject. So in Exodus 3, it starts with Moses. Moses was tending the flock. This is because right before 3:1, you have the Lord as the subject. So the next verse then will introduce Moses as the new subject of the verb that is following. So we have subject, verb, direct object. Sometimes the same thing can happen for emphasis. In this passage, the object actually occurs first to emphasize that in this verse about Joseph, it was Joseph, it was him that their father loved more than them. So literally, him their father loved more than all his brothers. So the object is emphasized by coming first. Disruption can also occur in making a contrast. In Genesis, it has been talking about how much violence and terrible things have been going on in the creation that God has made. And here, Noah is set off as being the exception. So Noah here is being contrasted to what everybody else is doing. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Finally, sometimes in parenthetical statements, you can have the subject of the verb first. So there may be action that's going on, and the text wants to point to something that's sort of happening in the background or off stage. So, and meanwhile, and that meanwhile is kind of interpretive here, the Midianites had sold him to Egypt. Also, I just wanted to give you a couple examples where there is a reversal of indirect object, direct object. Here in Exodus 15:1, the direct object occurs first, and then the indirect object, probably because the text is calling attention to the song of the sea that is to follow. And here in Exodus 28, the direct object comes first, followed by the indirect object, because the text has been talking about the names of the people. And so it is continuing that thought and emphasizing the direct object.